Game of Thrones. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. You remember this show back in the day? All the conspiracies, the mischief, the backstabbing, beheading. Ah, it was good back then, wasn't it? But everything went downhill after season 5. No doubt because of the combination of George R.R. Martin not finishing his books and the incompetent showrunning techniques of Dan and Dave. But I'll tell you one thing. Even though these twats ruined the show that we know and love, some of those characters just can't be destroyed. And in this video, I shall do my best to give you all the top 10 best characters in the entirety of Game of Thrones, with some honorable mentions. It's not healthy for us to just focus on the negatives on Game of Thrones, right? This is part 1 of a 3-part series. This is obviously the good one. On top of the best characters, expect a disappointing character list, as well as a bad written character list, and I'm sure you can guess who will be on there. But before we start, I'm sure you're wondering how I'm going to remain objective in this. Simply put, I will judge their greatness based on their personality traits, how consistent they remain, their likability or unlikability depending on the context. So in other words, this includes the villains and the heroes. I won't be ruling anyone out, and I won't be picking people because they're my favourites. And whilst I cannot be a robot, I will do my best to give you an objective outlook on each character I mention, with a little bit of my opinion when necessary. So, let's get to it, mate. Number 10.
There is only one God, and his name is Death.
And there is only one thing we say to death.
Not today.
Syrio Forel. I hear you all judging me. Why is a character that is only in the show for like 7 minutes on the top 10? Well, let me answer that for you. The guy's character is pretty much consistent. I mean, you can't really fuck up someone who's in the show for 7 minutes. He's strong, skilled, eccentric, and confident. And he remains that way until his end. This character and his mannerisms rub off on Arya Stark and is seen in her character throughout the seasons she appears in. Like I said, only 7 minutes, 3 scenes, and yet, he's so powerful. And I'm not just talking about his physicality. Every scene he's in, you can quote something from him. His philosophy is amazing. He's easily one of the most honourable people in the show. And that makes sense as to why Eddard Stark, the honourable Eddard Stark, would choose him, the first Sword of Bravos, to teach his daughter the water dance. Well written, amazingly executed, and a stark similarity, pun intended, to Jaqen H'ghar, another Bravosi within the series that knows all about the God of Death. He solidifies his spot as the number 10 best character in the entirety of Game of Thrones. Number 9.
I understand that if any more words come pouring out your cunt mouth, I'm gonna have to eat every fucking chicken in this room.
You lived your life for the king. You're gonna die for some chickens.
Someone is.
Sandor Clegane. You all know him, you all love him. This guy started off with the appeal as a villain, but ended up being one of the most liked characters in the show. Sandor isn't afraid to do what he needs to do. He will kill, he will beat up, he will intimidate, he will steal your chickens. Despite trading his morals for duty, he does have a soft spot for little birds. But this is not to say that he's a nice person or a morally good person or character. No, he's not. He can be an asshole. And we can link that to his treatment under his old brother, Gregor Clegane, who burnt him just for playing with one of his toys, scarring him for life. His father protected Gregor, and this created a bitterness between the two brothers. And you can see this brewing in him throughout his time in the show. He eventually has to confront his demons, whether it would be fire or his brother. And although it wasn't nothing amazing, his final scene, his death, ended up being one of the better deaths for characters in the show. He died conquering both of his fears in one swift jump. And I get it, it's not exactly a high bar. He's also a role model and temporary guardian for Arya Stark, showing compassion for her and her older sister when he was back in King's Landing. He remains one of the few characters not to have been completely tarnished at the end of season 8. He's strong, he's consistently inconsistent and well written, and somehow likable. I'll say this, he would have been a lot higher However, his character was a little iffy in season 8 and 7. It almost seemed that his fear to fire had disappeared on the journey north of the wall, and yet in season 8 of the Battle of Winterfell, the fear comes back. It's a little inconsistent. But despite this, Sandor Clegane, the Hound, the dog, gets number 9. Number 8.
There's a war coming, Ned. I don't know when, I don't know who we'll be fighting. But it's coming.
Robert Baratheon. My number 6 of my personal favourites, Robert Baratheon, the ex-king of the Seven Kingdoms, is one of the strongest and tactically sounded characters in Game of Thrones. He's well written, his character is consistent, like many of the others on this list, I'm not going to repeat that again. And despite him only being in one season, it seems that you've learned his entire history. Whether that be through the dialogue he has, various interactions with the other main characters. You can see, despite this guy being an arrogant cunt sometimes, he is somewhat honourable. He is respectful when he wants to be. He's a good leader when it needs to be, but he doesn't need to be in his eyes. They'd have you believe that Robert Baratheon is a bumbling buffoon, drunk off his ass, loves his tits, especially Bessie's tits. But no. Robert Baratheon is one of the smartest people in the show. He was one of the first, if not the first, to predict a war coming. He didn't know when, he didn't know who, but he knew it was coming. Boy, was he right. Although I don't think he expected it to go the way it did. Fire and blood. Some of the best scenes in the entire show involved Robert Baratheon in some shape or form. My personal favourite being between him, Jaime Lannister, and Sir Barristan Selmy, trading war stories. It was that scene where you got to see not only the others, but Robert Baratheon's mannerisms from their youth. Good old world building. Despite being a bully and his infidelities, underneath all that fat was a loving man. He loved Ned like a brother. He was a brother he chose. The best friend, the rebel, the usurper, the slightly abusive husband is number 8. Number 7.
If I win, he'll let me go.
If you think this has a happy ending, you haven't been paying attention.
Ramsay Bolton, or Ramsay Snow. Perhaps the best sociopath in the show. Ramsay is just... he's just pure evil, isn't he? And he fucking knows it. He's not a psychopath, he's a sociopath. Distinct difference, not a small difference, I know, but sociopaths know what the hell they're doing. He needs to have people below him. He needs to bend people to his will, whether it be for his own amusement or sexual gratification, or both. He will get it done. Ramsay's no fool, however. He's very good at breaking people down mentally. I mean, look at what happened to Theon, or Reek. Look at how he was able to make Miranda fall head over heels for him. Look at how he nearly killed Jon Snow with Rickon. Hell, look at what he did to Sansa in front of Theon. But he had a few flaws. His insecurities under his father, Roose Bolton. He needed validation from Roose, and Roose did his best not to give it to him until he deserved it. And then he pulled the rug out from under him once Theon and Sansa escaped. And then he killed his father, and killed his mother-in-law, and his little brother, with the hounds that would end up being his end as well, at the hands of Sansa Stark. Ramsay is no fool. He's smart, he's strong, he's a competent fighter, and a competent leader, and nearly bent the North to his will. But he shouldn't have played his games with the key to the North now, should he? Truly one of the greatest completely evil people in this entire show. He's not completely arrogant like most villains, but the sadist can back up his talk with action. All he needs is 20 good men. Ramsay is number 7. Number 6.
I cannot give you back your homes or restore your dead to life, but perhaps I can give you justice in the name of our king.
Eddard Stark. Oh, remember, for those of you who didn't read the books prior to watching the show, you remember this guy was meant to be the big lead. Although in his time alive, he didn't get to have his characters fleshed out some of the other characters on this list, his exposition did come through other characters, most notably Jaime Lannister, his archenemy. Despite being probably the most honourable person in Westeros, he does lack a bit of compassion for Jaime Lannister. He didn't listen to Jaime's reasoning, and although Jaime's reasoning was a bit iffy in itself, what Jaime did actually saved the entirety of King's Landing. We also learn through Bran and the Three-Eyed Raven that Ned Stark wasn't completely honourable. On some occasions he would lie. Apart from Arthur Dayne, it was with good intentions. But then you have to take into account, how can the wolf judge the lying for doing a very similar thing? But in fairness, Jaime Lannister should have arrested the Mad King, not killed him. You see, there's 3 sides to every story. Part A, Part B, and then the truth. Ned Stark's story truly is a tragedy of one of the most honourable men in Westeros, trying to do what he believes to be the best thing for his best friend Robert, his family, the North, and the realm, even when he shouldn't have. But Ned was never meant to be the leader that he is. He was raised to be a soldier, second to his elder brother, who was killed by the Mad King. Ned was never raised to play the Game of Thrones, and it led to his death. A true tragedy that made Game of Thrones one of the best series ever made. He never got to tell Jon the truth about his mother Lyanna. Eddard Stark gets number 6. Number 5.
Kill the boy. And let the man be born.
Aemon Targaryen. They say with age comes wisdom. The oldest member in the Night's Watch, and I believe the oldest person apart from Melisandre in the entire show. The 104-year-old serves the Maester in Castle Black for the Night's Watch. He's perhaps one of the most rational people in the entirety of the Seven Kingdoms, if not the entire world of Ice and Fire. He is sympathetic to Samwell Tarly and tries to give him wisdom. He helps Jon Snow to deal with the fact that he can't go and help his family down south by showing an example from his own life. Maester Aemon had to deal with the fact that he couldn't help his family down south. His brother's son, and his son, and the children, even the children. He's not power hungry like most of his relatives. Hell, he's actually quite a loving individual. He cares for people, family or otherwise. He gives advice to Jon Snow, who's in fact his great-great-nephew. If only he got to see that unfold, he would have realised that there was actually a Targaryen sitting right next to him all this time, instead of one being 1,000 miles away in the form of Daenerys Targaryen. He never got to see the dragons that his grandfather probably had before him. Maester Aemon Targaryen is written amazingly well. He's this old, blind man who's calm and collected, a century's worth of wisdom, knowledge, and insight, which he uses to help his members of the Night's Watch. And he's able to temper the minds of people such as Alistair Thorne and Jon Snow when they're going through their isms. As soon as Maester Aemon died of old age, everything went downhill for Jon Snow. It led to the boy being killed and the man being born. No man was wiser, or gentler, or kinder. Maester Aemon Targaryen gets spot number 5. And to Peter Vaughan, you are forever in our hearts. Number 4.
My father won the real war. He killed Prince Rhaegar. He took the crown while you hid on a costly rock.
Joffrey Baratheon. Isn't it funny that the biggest cunt in the entire series is played by probably the nicest person on the planet? We all call him Joffrey Baratheon, but let's be honest, he's a Lannister. Full-blood Lannister. The firstborn child of Jaime and Cersei's incestuous relationship. But he's the one that turned out insane. And it's not because he's just born that way. He's raised that way. I mean, you can attribute this to how Cersei raised Joffrey. He's spoilt rotten. Jaime obviously can't be the father he needs to be because, well, incest. Which leaves Robert Baratheon, and we've already explained his mannerisms. He's not exactly the best father. So what do you get from all of this? You get a vicious idiot. And I say idiot because he's not stupid. Yes, he acts like a twat. He constantly tries to intimidate people without actually knowing how to intimidate people, but by just using his birthright to power, alleged birthright I should say. Despite being full-blown Lannister, he doesn't inherit any of the good traits of Tywin, his grandfather. The reason why I consider Joffrey Baratheon to be a near-perfect character is because he has many flaws. And he gets this pointed out to him on multiple occasions, whether it be through his grandfather or his uncle, his mother or his betrothed. However, there are a few people who are able to temper that idiocy and manipulate him to achieve what they wanted to achieve. Marjorie Tyrell being the prime example. She did what Cersei couldn't do. Although Joffrey talks a good fight, he's probably one of the biggest cowards in the show. So much as a whiff of violence heading his way, and he will cower, he will plead for his life, or he will make an excuse to get out of the situation. He needs short-term gratification literally at all times. hence why he would torment Sansa Stark. And yet Marjorie Tyrell figured out other ways to stroke his ego. He's an amazing villain that just begs to be killed. Constantly butting heads with his uncle Tyrion, having the balls to challenge Tywin Lannister, albeit not through sheer strength and willpower, but because he believed his power would keep him safe. And because of Joffrey, the War of the Five Kings had to happen. There was no turning back. And unlike many, Joffrey was able to see the looming threat coming in the form of Daenerys Targaryen. Joffrey Baratheon, the tyrant, the king with no true power, is number 4. Number 3.
Tell Cersei. I wanted to know it was me.
Olenna Tyrell, the decrepit old woman with a mouth as sharp as Valyrian steel. If Tywin Lannister had a twin, it would be Olenna. Ah, I love this woman so much. Originally a red wine, Olenna stole her sister's betrothed and became the new Tyrell lady, and she would become the de facto leader of the entire Tyrell family. Unlike most of the lords and ladies of Westeros, Olenna is self-made. She must have been badass in her youth. A girl who knows the value of her pussy is dangerous. Beware, lads. I think that's why Tywin respected her so much, and Tywin doesn't respect people that often. She gets treated with respect that most male lords don't even get. She's witty, she's cunning, she's intelligent. She has a sense of humor that rivals early season Tyrion, and that's a high bar. She cares for her family and tries her best to elevate their position. She tries her best to instill wisdom into her granddaughter and grandson, albeit very neglectful of her son. And yeah, I get it, Mace is a bit of a dumb fool. Apparently her late husband was like that too. I mean, he died from falling off a cliff apparently. But she still loved them all. And then you can imagine how painful it must have been for her to lose her entire family, being the last surviving member of House Tyrell. All because of Cersei. It's almost as if she lost the human part of her once her family died. In fact, she even showed sympathy for Sansa Stark, albeit with ulterior motives. Normally she would be a bit more considerate when protecting her family, but once they died, she no longer had something to fear losing. So she told Daenerys Targaryen that she is a dragon, and that she should be the dragon. Some could argue that she was the reason that Daenerys went over the top in the second to last episode of season 8. And even in her final moments, she reminded Jaime why they call her the Queen of Thorns. Olenna Tyrell, the baddest bitch in Westeros, gets number 3. Number 2.
Who gave you the order? Who gave you the order? Say her name! You raped her! You murdered her! You killed her children!
Oberyn Martell, the bisexual badass of Dawn. Oh, I love this guy so much. He's bloody amazing. One of the best characters in the show easily. In the first bloody scene, you already know what he's there for. And that's what Game of Thrones does well in the early seasons. There's a perfect mix of reason, shock value, substance, and logic. And combine that with good writing, you have the earlier seasons, full stop, hands down. Oberyn wants to avenge the death of his sister, Elia Martell, the first wife of Rhaegar Targaryen. Tyrion gave the order, the Mountain committed the act, and then some. He also gives some much needed exposition into Robert's rebellion and Tyrion's youth. On the topic of Robert's rebellion, he delves into the topic of Rhaegar Targaryen and his sister, and their children. And in this season that he appears in, the entire Dornish arc is exposed and turns out to be one of the most promising arcs ever introduced in the show. However, it wasn't executed so well now, was it? Similar to how Syrio Forel gave us an insight into how Braavosi culture was, Oberyn Martell did the same for Dorne and Essos. He finds the Unsullied impressive on the battlefield, but not so much from the bedroom. This does amazingly for world building, and on top of that, he's such a charismatic motherfucker. He's swift, he's smart, he's courageous, he's confident, and he's got rationale behind him as well. However, in his final moments, he lost control of his emotions, and it would be the death of him. The Mountain killed the Viper, but the Viper created an earthquake for the Mountain to crumble before. All because the Mountain raped her, murdered her, and killed her children. On the topic of Tyrion, he told the story of how he was told that Tyrion was a monster, and when he saw the baby that Cersei had been telling him about, it was nothing but a baby. He was only in one season, but easily became one of the strongest characters in the entire show. Oberyn Martell, the Red Viper, the Rational Liberal, the Prince of Dawn gets number 2. Before I give you number 1, let's quickly have a look at a couple of honourable mentions. Honourable mention number 5, Alistair Thorne, the Man-at-Arms of Castle Black, ex-Targaryen loyalist and antagonist to Jon Snow. He really was unlikable in the first couple of seasons, wasn't he? But at least he had the balls to admit when he was wrong. Despite his disdain for the traitor's bastard, Jon Snow, he was able to work alongside of him when it came to it. However, that did not stop him from betraying his Lord Commander, and it led to his death. Honourable mention number 4, High Sparrow, a true Machiavellian, the main antagonist of season 6 to the Lannisters and the Tyrells. We never got to find out if he is truly as honourable as he claims, or if it's a facade, but that was the intention for his character. He is just a big mystery. Honourable mention number 3, Jorah Mormont, Lord of the Friend Zone. Love is usually the death of duty, but not of Jorah Mormont. In fact, I believe Jorah's love for Daenerys Targaryen enhanced his will to commit to his duty. In his past, he may have dishonoured himself, but he made sure to redeem himself. Whether it be to honour and protect Daenerys Targaryen, to defend the integrity of Tyrion Lannister, or to respect Jon Snow by not cock-blocking. Bloody legend. Honourable mention number 2, Brienne of Tarth, the first female knight of Westeros. Now this is how you insert identity politics into your media, not by forcing it in, but by making it consistent with the plot. Brienne of Tarth is one of the most honourable people in the entirety of the show, stretching even beyond Jon Snow and rivaling that of Ned Stark's. She is also one of the integral parts of Jaime Lannister's plot, making him one of the most honourable characters of Game of Thrones up until season 8. She has one of the best arcs in the show. Honourable mention number 1, Margaery Tyrell, Olenna's legacy. She didn't want to be a queen, she wanted to be the queen. In fact, she became the queen twice. 3 times if you're a Renly supporter. Margaery Tyrell was legendary when it came to winning over people's hearts and turning their interest towards her favour. Were it not for wildfire at the hands of Cersei Lannister, Margaery would have definitely won the Game of Thrones, becoming the most powerful person in Westeros. If only she had a better judge of character, she might have been able to avoid such bloodshed. But that's how the game goes. Number 1.
We could arrange to have you carried.
Tywin Lannister, the true power of Westeros. Imagine if Tywin became the king of Westeros. Do you know how much smoother it would be? A political mastermind, a sound tactician, an amazing strategist, and a brilliant leader. If Olenna Tyrell's mouth is as sharp as Valyrian's steel, such is Tywin's mind. There is a reason he is my favourite character. It is based all on a fact. It was Tywin Lannister's mindset and philosophy that made House Lannister so powerful. Tytos Lannister nearly destroyed the house, and it was Tywin who repaired it. Through any means necessary, he was brutal. Hell, he even has his own song made up after him, The Reigns of Castamere. Despite his brutal nature, he was able to see the value in making alliances with his enemies, the Martells and the Tyrells being the main examples. He is incredibly smart, hyper-intelligent almost, but he has a few minor flaws that make him shy of being perfection. He is for his house, not the realm. He can be incredibly cruel even to those that he should love, such as his own son Tyrion Lannister. And let's not even talk about the Red Wedding, oof. But he even showed his nice side to Arya Stark, unbeknownst to him, and cracked a smile. Tywin may be a bit arrogant and a bit stubborn. He may be a bit neglectful of his children, but he remains the epitome of the idea that the crown does not give you power. But this is only a third of the spectrum. We have not even delved into the disappointing or the worst. Stay tuned. I'll catch you all next week.